We are just 24 hours away from humanity's long-awaited return to the moon, over 50 years in the making. But just over 100 days ago, Jared Isaacman was sworn in as the 15th NASA Administrator. When he was nominated twice, we all had our thoughts on what he might do to steer the agency. What could happen to Artemis, SLS, the Lunar Gateway, just for example. There's been some reports that they may be corroded beyond repair. Is that true?
I won't comment on the beyond repair part to it, but the first part is true.
But in his first 100 days, it feels like Administrator Isaacman has announced more changes than many of the previous administrators combined. Now we have ignition, NASA's plan for the next decade, how America will return to the moon, build a moon base, and even send a nuclear-powered vehicle to Mars. But how about the nitty-gritty technical details?
Well, it's got more thruster performance and we can even generate power from the reactor, but it's got solar power on that too.
How about the realities of spending billions on a moon base?
That's not for one mission, that's to be able to do lots of missions in the future.
Are the contractors on board?
They absolutely welcome this.
Is NASA's workforce on board?
We haven't seen people picketing outside of headquarters or mass walkouts from our centers saying, what's happening here? I love DUS, must continue.
That is what this discussion is all about. I know we have like 6 hours of questions and we only have 1 hour of your time around there. So thank you very much again for coming up to speak with us. That really means a lot.
No, absolutely. It's great to be here and wanted to have a chance to kind of chat and answer questions. There's been obviously a lot going on the last couple weeks and we've got a moon mission on the horizon. So plenty to discuss.
Absolutely. Just under 2 days out now. The clock just started a few hours ago, so we're feeling pretty good. Artemis II has so far had a bit of difficulty so far in terms of getting off the ground. It's, for one thing, it's a few years behind from when they first wanted to launch it. There's been concerns about Orion's heat shield, and the wet dress rehearsal the first one didn't exactly meet the requirements that they wanted with the LH2 leak in the TSMU, not to mention the helium leak that required the rollback to the VAB. You inherited this program when you came on. What exactly are your concerns and how are your nerves?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're trying to address some of those concerns right now, and I think that we've been having some success getting people to get aligned around a different course, specifically because of those issues. I mean, look, I think it's in two parts. One, we can clearly look at the way we've been doing things over the last, you pick the time frame and say this is not on a path to success. I mean, I don't think any of us thought we were going to hit the initial February launch window. Just that much time after Artemis I would have been unrealistic. That was an opportunity for us to go through the motions, but giving up the next window after a successful wet dress, that was extremely discouraging to go back into the VAB at that point in time. And in both instances, right? So the liquid hydrogen leak and then the helium flow issues, virtually identical issues to Artemis I. I mean, it gives you points, to highlight and say we got to do some things different. Now, again, that's in one part. I mean, certainly all the OIG reports that are flagging, look, everything is taking more time than we want, costs more than it should as a factor. And then I think one of the other things we can point to that have really helped align some of our stakeholders in Congress is like we no longer have time to endure any of this anymore. Like, is this a space race? Yes. Are there implications for getting it wrong? Absolutely. And as I've said many times, like this success and failure is measured in months, not years. And if that's the case, how can you afford to lose so many months relearning the same lessons when Artemis III comes around or Artemis IV? So I think all that you've observed, all that the space community has observed for a long time as they've waited patiently for this opportunity to return to the moon is why we have to alter course and why I think we found so much success getting people aligned around it.
Tagging onto that, you've stressed the importance of maintaining competency and skills. And the long times in between Artemis launches have led those skills to, I don't know if it was you or someone else said that these skills can atrophy, especially over 3.5 years between launches. They certainly can. It's been a huge challenge. It sounds like increasing the launch cadence is critical to maintaining those skills.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, after We were always going to announce that we were going to add a mission in 2027. We're kind of, regardless of the vehicle, went back into the VAB. I chose to pull in the timeframes a little bit because at that point, I felt like we owed it to the public to not only give them the path forward for Artemis II, but actually an achievable path forward for getting back to the moon. And I shared that with a lot of the exploration ground systems team. This is when I was here over a weekend, I don't know, probably a couple months ago, basically when we found the helium flow issue. And I was talking to them about it, and it was like, how many of you guys are planning to stick around after Artemis II? And like a very large percentage were like, I'm here for the mission, like I've worked for a long time to get to this point, but yeah, I'm gonna go do other things. And who can blame them? Like, why would you want to wait around another 3 years? So right there, I mean, you're hearing it right from the people themselves that they do not want to wait 3 years for the next opportunity. So you're literally hearing the people tell you that the muscle memory is walking out the door. And then you're going to have to rebuild it again. And again, you're going to wind up relearning exactly the same lessons we learned with Artemis II if we didn't get into a good cadence. Not to mention, like, it's more than just turning the pad. And the operations associated with launching a vehicle as complicated as Artemis II. Like, we got to create that urgency for all of the manufacturers, right? I mean, it's just, pulling in production right now, understanding what's at stake, realizing that NASA is not going to be a passive customer in this. We're not a procurement agency, okay? Like, this is what we are good at right now. We don't go at it alone. We will work with our partners to get the equipment that we need to pull historic missions like this together. But if we're going behind schedule, if we're going over budget, we will take an active role in remedying the situation. So yeah, there's pad turn operations, but also I think getting the vendors to understand and meet the moment as well. And that's what's happening right now.
With all that being covered now, looking forward to the actual mission itself, what part of Artemis II is Jared Isaacman, the administrator, most excited about with the mission?
I mean, look, even from my own prior, spaceflight experience, there was never any one particular, it was always about the mission, right? All of it. There's a lot that we need to learn from Artemis II to give us the confidence to advance forward, right? We don't have a plan B with our spacecraft here. Like, Orion has to work, SLS, has to meet our expectation on this in order to get comfortable with launching again in 2027. And then 2028 is the moon landing. There's just not a lot of schedule margin here. So, from my perspective, every bit of it matters. What I'm going to enjoy the most is when they're under parachute and splash down safely off the West Coast. I think that's probably the most important moment of the mission.
What about Jared Isaacman, the person? Does it also apply under the same umbrella?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that, the survival, making sure the crew comes back safely on this is paramount. So whether NASA administrator or space fan enthusiast, like I want, these crew are undertaking, the most dangerous human spaceflight mission in 53 years. It is a whole nother animal once we commit to TLI. Like, we've not been in that business for more than a half century, and the we can come home in hours thing no longer is applicable. So yeah, when we commit to that, everything is going to be about getting them undershoot safely in the water again. And look, I hope we get through as many of the mission objectives as we possibly can, grow confidence in Orion and SLS, because we do have to get right back at this and start stacking for Artemis III.
So now moving on to the topic of ignition, which itself, at least in my recent memory, I can't recall a day within decades as pivotal in terms of space policy in a positive way. You set out to build a business plan last week for NASA, taking on the president's space policy and transitioning into real items that mean dollars and cents to both launch providers and commercial partners. The funds themselves, though, aren't necessarily huge. Is that just seed money? And are you guys trying to encourage commercial partners to create a sort of space economy in themselves?
Well, I think, look, everything we are trying to do is to work into a direction of igniting a space economy. But I would tell you I'm much more focused on the outcomes right now. And if the outcomes in themselves yield economic potential for industry, well, that's fantastic, right? I mean, we put a demand signal out. We need lots of landers, and that means we need lots of launches, and we're going to need rovers, and we're going to, experiment with telecom and power, and surface mobility, surface improvement, navigation. Those are all things that we need to build a moon base. That doesn't mean any of it's going to materialize in something that is going to be like economically self-sustaining for a company. Like I hope we discover something that necessitates 100 landers out in the future and hundreds of people living and working on the lunar surface. But what we're focused on is outcomes. And that's what Ignition was all about for a very long time now. And I do attribute this to America not having a great geopolitical competitor that could challenge American leadership in space. And I think as a lot of the space-loving community would say, like, well, that was great for everybody but us. Like we didn't get anywhere near as many telescopes or rovers as we'd want. We didn't get around the moon. And like generally the outcomes suffered as a result of trying to make everyone happy because there's so many programs that got canceled or never got off the ground. I think people that think about that all the time are like, NASA doesn't have enough budget, should get $1 trillion a year. Why isn't it the same as the DOW? It's not the world we live in, but I'll tell you, we throw away billions. We have thrown away billions for years on things that we didn't execute properly on. So what was Ignition about? It was about going back to what NASA must do for the American people and not what everybody is trying to force upon us on that one. To put our resources on the needle-moving objectives that people have been extremely patient waiting for a long time. How we're responding to President Trump's national space policy, how we're making use of the resources available to us, of which, tell you, $10 billion in that one big beautiful bill, the vast majority of it prioritized to human space exploration. You got a national space policy, you got the resources and a whole government mandate, like you can do some pretty incredible things. And that's what we're trying to do now.
And so the program itself also lays out some very ambitious plans in themselves, as we've already kind of touched on a little bit. How will the agency ensure that the contractors keep to budgets and their timelines? Because that's clearly been an issue in the past.
Yeah, you know what I would say though? What we tried to lay out is achievable plans. Everything we do at NASA is pretty ambitious, right? I mean, it should be. We're NASA on that. But we could have put this wild 3D rendering of the glass dome on the moon with, plants in it and, a Ferris wheel and kids having fun or something and be like, okay, that looks pretty wild. It never would happen, right? Like we're actually trying to do pretty challenging things, but in a logical, iterative way, a phased approach to getting to the outcomes that we want to see. That's why like phase 1, I've described to people, hey, the moon might look like a junkyard. There could be a lot of broke down rovers and landers somewhere, all around the south pole of the moon. But you know what? We're learning. Helps even with Artemis IV at that point. I mean, we're going to have we'll probably have 18 maybe landings on the south pole of the moon, obviously uncrewed robotic landings before the first crewed landing. Like we're going to learn from that. We're going to have observation up there, communication. Who knows? Maybe we'll even done a surface improvement demonstration. So doing things like again, getting back to some of the basics, I think is the right approach. So again, everything we do at NASA should be ambitious. Hopefully, what we're setting out to do this time is actually a lot more achievable.
So in terms of the contracts and the paperwork needed to get all that off the ground, are we talking like fixed price contracts, cost plus? Is Congress going to fund this? How's that structure going to work?
Yeah, so I mean, literally everything we discussed at Ignition was covered under either the One Big Beautiful Bill or, so again, that was $10 billion, or our 26 appropriations. So, we had $2.8 billion for Gateway. Now we've said we're pausing and we're pivoting from a orbital gateway to a surface gateway. So now you take a look at what the average CLPS mission costs when you're only doing 3 or 4 of them a year. Now scale that up. Assume you're getting even, some 10% efficiencies from the associated buying power. You got 20 some odd landings right there, right? Like that's a big difference. So that's just a quarter of the One Big Beautiful Bill funding that can do that. The SR1 Freedom, the nuclear electric propulsion demonstration, obviously we've got PPE that we're repurposing from Gateway. We got a partially paid off nuclear reactor, partially paid off fuel. Why? Because we spent $20 billion not undertaking a nuclear power and propulsion in space initiative over the years. We're pulling a lot of stuff out of the lab, not trying to get to the 100% solution. Like I can't emphasize how important that is. Like we gotta get back to building things in a logical phased approach. You know, and you see some of the criticism. Oh, we're launching this mission to Mars, and this is the best we could do is 3 helicopters. Like, no, we're finally getting something for the $20 billion we threw at nuclear power in space, not because it is not optional. Like if we are going to build out a significant presence on the lunar surface, send humans to Mars someday, we better figure out how to unlock the potential of fission power in space. Let's build the 70% solution. Nautilus was a 70% solution. It was designed as a diesel boat. Let's get underway in nuclear power and propulsion. That in itself is the primary objective, and drop off Skyfall along the way. That's, again, largely recycling a lot of resource that's there. Everything we're trying to do with the acceleration of the Artemis program right now is leveraging the One Big Beautiful Bill funding. We would not be able to add another mission and increase production rates had those resources not been made available. So again, whenever it's like, is Congress ever going to fund all this? We've got the resources and we have the executive order. This is about executing. And to your point, it's not just about signing firm fixed price contracts. We are going to put hundreds of SMEs, subject matter experts, at vendors, at subcontractors, assigned to the components on the critical path, and they are going to drive outcomes.
NASA has put out absolutely like no shortage of RFIs since ignition.
Yes.
And what are you going to do to fill the holes that perhaps the industry cannot fill or will not?
Well, I think that depends. I have not seen anything yet where industry was like, nope, we're out. I mean, like industry has, first, I think just space enamors everyone, and like a lot of companies that even have great, business endeavors here on Earth. Like for example, nuclear power, terrestrial-based nuclear power. I mean, you've got like unlimited demand right now to meet the, AI requirements. They still want to help, whether that's, components as it relates to SR1 freedom that may require. So like, I think everybody wants to help, but I think it was imperative to drop the RFIs and RFPs at the same time as ignition, because it's easy to talk. Like we can go up and put together cool slides and it can make sense. Like the hard part is executing. And that's why I said like this spacefaring ship set sails, like we're moving right to execution mode, breakout sessions the next day. And look, I think as somebody who ran a defense company for 10 years, you put a cycle out there where you do, market research, draft RFP. You know what that's all time to shape requirements. And you do that. We get back into the game that we've been in for the last 10 years of trying to make everybody happy. We get nowhere, and that's not going to happen. So NASA, for the first time in a long time, said what we need to execute on the mission to achieve the president's space policy. Here's the RFIs and RFPs. You can spend your time either trying to fight us on this one, or you can start figuring out how you're going to contribute to, to this great adventure. And I think people are moving.
After that presentation last week, we saw posts all across social media, especially on X, from Blue Origin, ULA, Vast, Impulse, Intuitive Machines, and their leadership, and just praising the plan. Are NASA's partners on board?
Our international partners?
Just partners in general.
Oh yeah, I mean, just look, we try and have a no surprise policy. We go and we speak to everybody, get everybody aligned early on. That's what we did with the US pivot. You saw that day when we announced it. I mean, congressional leaders came out, industry came out and said, this is the right thing to do. And we did the same thing going into ignition. So I think everyone was pretty supportive. And I've told everybody too, there's a lot of people who are just extremely enthusiastic, even if it's at their own detriment, even if they know that this component's going away or that, this is the right thing for the American people. And even though where there could be resistance, I've told everyone, look, if we come up short, I'll be fired. If we're watching our rival get to the moon before us, I'll be fired, and I'll be at home watching on TV as you all testify before Congress and explain where the $100 billion went. So whether you're doing it for all the right reasons, because the hopes and dreams of our children are on the line here, or not to mention American exceptionalism in the high ground of space, or you're doing it because you know what, it's time to just get things in gear and start delivering on the, on the promises that were made long ago. Whatever the motivation is, we will take it as long as everybody's moving in the correct direction. And the correct direction is the moon.
Actually, speaking of going in the correct direction, or just a direction in general, what happens if a commercial partner decides not to participate and do their own thing? Is NASA at risk of being left behind?
Well, I don't know of any of the major players that have said, like, we're out. Like I said, I mean, every one of them, all of the prime contractors on SLS are in, both our landers are in. I mean, we're doing things to help them. Like, we are not sitting on our hands in this. Like, when I say, like, NASA's gonna play an active role and drive outcomes, oh, is that scary? They want the help. We've probably created a lot of the issues for them over the years that have slowed them down. So they absolutely welcome this. Ex-CVA suits, after my visit with Axiom, it was like, look, we already picked our partner in this one. So, like, are we gonna just sit back and like cross our arms and say, like, where's our suits? Or are we going to put some of the best and brightest we have in this? The people at JSC have been working on suits for a long time, embed them in the organization and help deliver outcomes on that. So again, I'm not aware of any of our industry partners that haven't leaned into this and said, let's do it. Let's get back to the moon. Let's build the base and let's start doing the other things.
You've talked before and mentioned a lot the Big Beautiful Bill and 2026 funding. They have been big parts of making sure ignition gets off the ground, both, I guess, literally and figuratively. The bill passed before you were in office. I guess that also plays into the fact that Artemis II is on the pad right now. Like, you sort of inherited it. Does that? I'm curious to know how that direction kind of changed and how our leaders responded to that pivot.
Well, I just say I think that's part of running a government agency. You don't get to start necessarily with a clean slate. You have to work with the resources that are available to you, and some of these programs have been around for an extremely long time, and you have lots of people with different opinions on how you should apply these resources, and I actually find that rather stimulating. I think it's part of the challenge to bring everybody together, that everybody loves NASA, and get people aligned on going in the right direction. You do it with a lot of small groups leading up to an event like Ignition and make sure, okay, we're all here, right? Because like tomorrow is showtime. And then you bring the rest of the workforce and industry along. So I'd say certainly it's part of the challenge, right? I mean, the One Big Beautiful Bill, was written, there was a lot, look, it referred to Gateway before, right? And then, you have conversations with political leadership and understand, look, we can be above the moon, looking down, or we can be on the moon. You decide what is more important. I can tell you from my professional opinion where we'd be. I think we'd rather be on the surface where a lot of the learning is going to take place, where we can interact with the regolith, do things like in situ resource manufacturing, build the skills, test the technology, the capabilities we're going to need someday if we actually go to Mars and want to bring our astronauts home to talk about it. And I think generally people get pretty aligned around that point rather quickly, especially knowing that it's not like you're just going to be on Gateway looking down. You're going to probably be looking down on another country's astronauts, and I think that got everybody properly motivated.
This is actually one that I'm really curious to dive into. So you recently set out a new plan for Artemis 4 and 5 in scrapping the Block 1B version of SLS in favor of a new standardized approach. However, if Artemis 3 flies or doesn't fly with an upper stage with that spacer, and Centaur 5 flies after ICPS on Artemis 4, and the future of SLS is a bit uncertain after Artemis 5, I'm wondering if the standardization is coming after Artemis 5 for a longer term version of SLS, or where does that stance really come in?
So it's a good question, right? So first, we put what comes after Artemis 5? At Ignition, we put out an RFI looking for industry for 2 different solutions to send crew to the moon on a cadence every 6 months. I would guarantee you at least one of the submissions coming in, if you have 2 pathways, is going to be some combination of the current SLS providers. So in that respect, there is absolutely a world, and look for Orion right now. That is the vehicle, right? So I would be very certain to see them probably on numerous different combinations of of boosters that could potentially come out. So in that respect, having a standardized upper stage would make some sense. But here's the alternative. Let's say you're right. Let's say there is a world where Artemis 5 is the last time the SLS configuration was flown. Would you rather fly that one with a upper stage that you knew was in production right now, with several of them on the assembly line floor, or continue to do the development of a custom one-off for a mission to co-manifest crew and cargo when you've already, prior to me ever arriving, made the decision to start manifesting gateway modules on another commercial provider? So I don't, and not to mention, would it necessitate the continuation of the development of an upper stage that really had not advanced very, very far at all in that, but also required to continue to pour money into a one-off mobile launcher that would then have to go through an extensive amount of time to integrate with that upper stage and the pad itself. Yeah. Like, those all become distractions when what we're trying to do is concentrate resources, especially in this fiscally constrained environment, when you are trying to do the near impossible, when budgets are not likely to grow. Concentrate them on the needle movers. We need SLS to put astronauts in space. We don't need to co-manifest with any other cargo. There's plenty of other commercial providers that can, if you decided tomorrow you want to rebuild a gateway, you'd have plenty of different options to potentially get that hardware there. You want to be able to get into a reliable state that every year or less you can launch astronauts in space for a journey to the moon. You didn't need to continue exploration upper stage to do that. You didn't need to continue ML2 to do that. And by the way, I'd emphasize every $1 billion does matter. When everybody's like, in this one, $1 million still matters, $1 billion still matters. You can do a lot of science and discovery when you allocate those resources correctly. So
speaking of hardware with, I guess, an uncertain future, I was talking to Doug Hurley actually today about the development of the Boley booster and going forward, and how Northrop is still on contract until Artemis 9, or up to Artemis 9. That, I guess, that bodes positive in that direction. But also, speaking of hardware with, I guess, an uncertain future, Mobile Launcher 2 is right there. Right. It's just sitting right there. And it's to this point, it's also been delayed, it's over budget, largely finished, I think, at this point. Maybe not anywhere near flight ready yet, but largely finished.
I mean, that's a very key distinction, right? So I don't make these decisions alone, right? I talk to some of the best people we have at NASA. I mean, Amit, the associate administrator of the agency, came out. He's like, look, even if we finish this off, I couldn't tell you how many more years and how much more money was going to have to go into it to actually ensure that it integrated properly with the Block 1B and the pad. It's going to take a lot of resources and a lot of dollars and time we just simply don't have. Now, what's the future of ML2? There's a lot of different options available to it. For one, after Artemis 1, there was substantial damage to ML1. We put in a lot of fixes for that. Generally, everyone I've spoken to on this is pretty high confidence we're not going to see anywhere close to the amount of damage. But if we did, now we've got spare parts that are available to it. We can get very good at turning one pad. We could modify it to support the same kind of Block 1 standard. The alternative is industry has expressed interest in it. So I think there is a world where taxpayers can kind of get some value back if one or others in industry want to make use of that, potentially in the future even make use of 39B, potentially in the future make use of vehicle assembly building. So I think there's a lot of options there where we can get value that supports the mission as opposed to continuing to make investments and have the distraction away from our primary mission right now.
Well, there are contracts beyond Artemis 5. What does it mean to those contractors who are currently producing hardware with the uncertainty of Artemis beyond the fifth mission?
I think the best thing they should do is actually get us back to the moon. I mean, you want to, and I've told this to every one of the prime contractors that work on SLS. You want to have a future to Artemis 10 and beyond, you've got to shake the $4 billion disposable rocket thing. You got to do it. Like, that is an argument that can't be won right now. You know how you do that? Like, increase production, increase launch cadence, start averaging down the effective cost per vehicle, and make a compelling argument of why we need to have two. I'll put out the RFI that we should have two. I'll state it we should have two. I don't want to see us ever give up the moon again. But like the idea of like, hey, regardless of performance, doesn't matter if I'm on time, doesn't matter I'm on budget, doesn't matter it's 4 or 5 years in the future, I need to have certainty to Artemis 10 or 12. It's not how it works in our society. Sorry, the best products and capabilities have to prevail. So I've said it, and I'll tell you, Steve Parker at Boeing responds really well. Lightfoot at Lockheed, same thing. Yeah, we got to step up to meet the moment. We got to deliver on the promises that we've made to the American people. We're going to show that our hardware, our capability, our workforce can get us back to the moon, do it with frequency, do it affordably. And if they can do that, sure, they should absolutely be in the game, long after Artemis 5. But no, I can't hear what about in 2033? Sorry, we got to get back to the moon by 2028. Deliver that, make the case, and then, who wouldn't want to see rockets like that going? It is a cool looking rocket. Yeah, I want to see that thing keep going up. That's got to come first. We got to get back to outcomes. I care about outcomes far more than I care about the politics or process of the moment.
It seems like we've been lacking a lot of building a foundation rather than just trying to build like the house or the building before we have the foundation, therefore everything crumbles and falls apart. It's been really frustrating to watch, and it's incredibly refreshing to see change there. As a fellow space nerd, I can't really stress enough how much.
Can I, by the way, point something else out too?
Absolutely.
It's not just like the space community watching from the outside saying like, I like what I'm hearing right now. This is throughout NASA right now. Like there's no mass protests, right? Like, we haven't seen people picketing outside of headquarters or mass walkouts from our centers saying, what's happening here? I love DUS, must continue, and all these things. You got 50,000 of some of the smartest people in the world, and people are energized. They're energized to get this crew going around the moon, to start stacking, to like turn ML1. Like, people are already thinking about these things. They're having the conversation. Really encourage folks. Like, I'm out there. I try and amplify the message and keep people well informed. But there's a lot of other people out there from NASA that are talking to, that show up every day at these various centers, and like they're getting into it. The energy is there. This is it's a really good feeling. It's certainly like when we're doing like the 18-hour days at headquarters and you see people that are really charged up. It's a motivation you need to get back the next day and do it all over again. Look, I think there's a lot of people in NASA that are showing up to work every day right now that are trying to change the world. I mean, no one says it better than the Artemis II crew when they arrive here about how grateful they are to everybody that went into building this rocket, training and preparing for them over the last couple of years. But I've been around to all the centers, a lot of the ones that people don't ever visit. I was in West Virginia about 10 days ago, just before Project Hail Mary came out, to visit the IV&V facility. It's doing all the software verification and validation on no-fail missions like Artemis II out there. So there's a lot of great people that are pretty charged up that are, they're excited to start doing what NASA used to do and change the world in July 20th, 1969, do it all over again.
So we've kind of touched on it already, but Gateway.
Yep.
We've seen that the PPE is going to the SR-1 spacecraft. Is the module actually a good technical fit, or was it just kind of pulled off the line as just the best we had at that time available?
Oh, I mean, it's going to be great for the purposes of the objective, which is to actually demonstrate nuclear power and propulsion in space. And I mean, it's like it's actually it's readily available. It's got more thruster performance than we can even generate power from the reactor, but it's got solar power on that too. So it's going to be an interesting demonstration. We are going to try and optimize it further, strip away a lot of mass to increase performance out of it. So if you were to do a completely clean sheet design, could you get a lot more performance out of it than the way it was designed? Totally, right? But I mean, at the same respect, Nautilus, again, was a diesel bolt off the line, and they evolved it, continuously. We absolutely have to try and get away from nailing the perfect solution out of the gate. The perfect solution in recent history at NASA doesn't arrive anytime when we think it will and costs way more than what's expected. Like, getting underway in nuclear power in space is a huge deal. We build out a lunar base, in the near permanently shaded regions of the moon. You're going to want to have fission surface power for sure, especially when you start doing a lot of the in-situ resource manufacturing. That's going to be the proving ground for Mars. Definitely going to want it on Mars. Certainly could have, lots of football fields of solar panels, and maybe we do live in a world where there's robots that are cleaning them off and everything, but I think it'd be great to have a nuclear reactor on there as well. Not to mention, you get out past Jupiter, now you're at like sub 4% of the effectiveness of the sun. nuclear power and propulsion is the right direction we should go. It is working on the near impossible that industry should not be working on. Right now, we're in a unique period of time. We're doing lots of chemical propulsion and heavy lift rockets. Industry is doing it as well. NASA's at its best doing what others are not capable of doing. This is the right direction. Even if it's somewhat of a less than optimal scenario, repurposing PPE, it's going to support all our primary objectives.
Gateway has 2 other modules under varying phases of construction, like Halo is currently in the USA for outfitting, and IHAB currently being built in Italy. They also exist. What exactly is happening to them? Are those going to be repurposed for on-surface operations, or what's their plan? So
we're looking into that. All right. I would say to be very transparent. We'll produce some reports on it. Both do have hardware-related issues. There are non-conformances related to it, so that would take more time and more resources than what we originally planned to invest in them. That said, I'm sure there is something that we can salvage from here. There's certainly avionics, comm systems we can take off. I've been meeting with our international partners. Everybody is committed to being on the surface. Believe me, I haven't run into an international partner that said, no, I would rather be above the moon than actually be walking on the moon shoulder to shoulder with NASA astronauts. So they're coming up with ideas. No doubt for something like IHAB, it would require additional resources to go in and modify that for surface applications. But that means it opens up the opportunity for surface seats for those nations' astronauts. And when you're thinking beyond Artemis 5 and you're putting out a demand signal for what you hope to be dozens of missions in the future, and it no longer costs $20 billion that you have to somehow rationalize your contributions to meet a surface seat for, you can actually forecast out being included in a crew on an Artemis 12 or 13 or 14 by applying whatever hardware component necessarily to the surface needs. So I think everybody's pretty excited about it. Whether IHAB makes its way to the surface, that's going to be up to our partners, but they know what opportunity is available to them if they're able to make it work. And Halo is probably a little bit of a tougher one. We've given some thought to that. I think we'll have to get back to you on what the future of that hardware looks like.
There's been some reports that they may be corroded beyond repair. Is that true? Or it seems a bit out of hand that progress is so slow that hardware is corroding while it's in development.
Yeah. Well, I won't comment on the beyond repair part to it, but the first part is true.
So I guess now let's now touch on the moon base that Carlos was so enthusiastic to talk about. He was actually here today, and I heard him say the thing, "I'm your moon base guy," numerous times.
He's great.
It's the best. He's the best.
Yeah, Carlos has been exceptional to work with on this, by the way. He is the most fire and forget leader that I have encountered. Where you talk through things and you come back and there's 30 slides and it lines up perfectly, exactly as you thought. He's been executing so well, assembling such a great team. So I had no doubt that he was going to do a fantastic presentation there. But the unexpected was that he became the internet sensation moon base guy. Yeah. And so well deserved. He's never going to let that down. He's going to wear that on his business cards and his signature line forever.
I was walking by when I think he was filming with IMAX, and he said the thing, "I'm your moon base guy." It's yeah, he said the thing. He said the thing.
He's awesome.
Could the recent focus on AI and data centers in space by several of NASA's commercial partners, such as TerraFab and Project Sunrise, negatively impact NASA's ability to execute on the overall goal here? What if the NASA moon base isn't a priority at that point for commercial partners?
No, I see it the exact opposite. I've talked about this for a long time now, about how important it is to ignite the orbital economy. For everything we all want to see in space someday, it's not going to happen if it's always paid for by the taxpayers. It's just not. The arguments, and I've sparred in them a bunch of how can we invest all this in space when everything's so broken here on Earth? And it's these are good arguments. We're going to do both. A very small part for our future and a lot towards trying to fix some of the hardships of the day. But it's a good argument, and you need to unlock some other form of value that either requires microgravity or the lunar regolith. To really stimulate in a sustainable way industry investment, and then get to the really hot KPI that we're all about, which is, again, lots of people living and working in space someday. So I think this is a good thing, because for 60 years it's been launch, observation, and communications. Now we got a shot that it could be something else. when industry is putting together slides with mass drivers on the moon. Does that get me excited? When we're also trying to get to the moon, you better believe it. I think the more resources that go into this kind of thing, we're going to benefit from industry and their innovation cycle to make capabilities better than we could have imagined and cost less, so we can focus on what they're not capable of doing. That's like a good, the table's set really well in that regard.
Many times over the past few months, you have made reference to how multiple presidential administrations have called for a return to the moon. Yet Artemis II is the first crewed flight since 1972, like well over 50 years at this point. How confident are you that the moon-based plans themselves alone, not to mention the hardware beyond that, assuming we get there, can survive beyond this current presidential cycle?
Yeah, I'm extremely confident because I'd like to think the approach we're taking makes a lot of sense. If I told you we're going to build this $100 billion city on the moon, yeah, I would be pretty nervous that that's going to have a tough time making its way through various administrations. And even if it did, the odds of it working the way we expect it to, pretty low. I'd say pretty low at this point. What we're doing is this makes sense. If the next administration doesn't necessarily, you can dial up or down the number of launches. It's like, all right, maybe instead of trying to hit a launch cadence of every month, we'll go to every other month. But you're still moving in the right direction because you didn't try and nail it in one shot. And we've been doing that for far too long. Really, this was a departure from make everybody happy type of approach, which if you're going to even attempt that, means you got to drag everything out. And if you drag things out, well, it costs more. And not to mention plans change. There was nothing wrong with probably a gateway strategy in 2017 when it began. Today, I think we'd rather be on the surface than above it. If you take a really long time with what you're trying to do because you stretch it out, well, then we learn new things because we don't stop listening to data, and we might go in a different direction, and then programs we canceled, and all those resources were wasted. Here, we're taking it in phases. Lots of landings, lots of learnings, expectations. We get what we can to inform the next phase. And I think that's going to be something that regardless of who's in office, you're going to have Congress that'll get behind because they love NASA, and it's not a break the bank all or nothing. We can proceed the way we have in the past, which has generally led to good outcomes.
We've actually been seeing you flying around KSC a lot in recent days in the F5s and the Alpha Jet. I know my colleagues and I have actually been around and been quite distracted seeing you guys go over a few times. It's been awesome to see. But how's that program been going? Is that the incentive flights for employees? It
is. So, and unfortunately, I love it every time you saw F5s flying around here that I was in one of them, but that's not the case. I've generally been making it every 2 weeks on a Friday to do some of the employee incentive flights. But the good news is we have a lot of pilots that are kind of eager to fly around this amazing airspace, especially when you have a moon rocket out on the pad. And yeah, we are flying just incredibly well-deserving NASA employees and contractors. And I'd say we probably are close to have flown 30 at this point, but the best part is they're not all flying Air Jared anymore in these F5s. So we just began getting workforce incentive flights out on the F-18s at Armstrong, which is very cool.
Whoa. And
I guess maybe just breaking a little bit of a surprise here, we let the United States Air Force Thunderbirds come and fly around SLS, Artemis II, before it went back in the VAB. Part of the deal is you got to make some back seats available for some deserving NASA workforce employees. So I think in the last 48 hours, about 4 NASA employees found out that they're going to get to go fly with the Thunderbird soon. So we're trying to make this a big deal. The NASA workforce works incredibly hard. I am literally asking them to try and do the near impossible. For those that are delivering great outcomes, they should be recognized this way.
Wow. Okay. So from F5s to F-16s and F-18s, the spectrum there's pretty well covered at this point.
Yeah. Well, NASA does have a fair sized Air Force. So we got F-15s, we got U-2s, we got WB-57, we got a 777, 737s. We got a lot of aircraft. So
right, the 777 now, because the DCA was just recently retired, right?
Yeah. I think it has another year before it's flying, but when it does, then I'll certainly be able to bang out the workforce incentive flights like 200 at a clip. So that's awesome. So that's good.
Awesome. So how does someone actually qualify for those flights? And is that a sort of take it as it comes, or is there a long list waiting for those flights?
Oh, we're trying to get somewhere around like 1% of the workforce per year, which would be a really nice target. The top 1% gets recognized in this way. But we're also trying to do other incentive programs too, like flown hardware, or actually just flying out people that otherwise would not have been able to come to an Artemis II launch or a Falcon 9 launch or something like that. So we're trying to do lots of different programs, but for flight experiences, trying to get the kind of top 1% every year recognized. And I'd say right now it's done through a nomination process at the center level, and then the AAs at the mission directorates can nominate people as well.
Is your position, your job, all that you wanted it to be going in when you first got the role a few months ago?
Yeah, I mean, everything, look, there's always a ton to learn, and that's what we actually spent the first couple months doing, was traveling around and trying to learn as much as we can. But I would say in terms of the ability for us to contribute and bring about positive change, it's actually a lot better than I anticipated. There are no meetings that we've gone into where it's a dead end or we can't proceed further or find a better way or better path forward. I mean, there's just so many opportunities to kind of get after the science and discovery that we're all excited about. So in a lot of ways, I mean, even these are really long days for everyone. No one's been sleeping a lot over the last couple months. Yeah, I mean, it's I just say everybody is getting pretty energized for what's in the realm of possible here to achieve.
You have about 3 years left in your current tenure. What does success look like at the end of your term, and what sort of message do you want to leave behind in terms of your legacy?
Oh yeah, so it's funny, when I was doing my various center tours, people would ask that all the time, and I would tell them, like, the answer you're thinking of, the lazy answer is just say, bring America back to the moon. That's luck, that's timing, right? Like, you just happen to be there at a time where you have a president very committed to returning to the moon, and you have the resources and the space policy to do it. To me, it's about setting up NASA to be able to do things that make building a moon base seem pale in comparison. And that's two areas of focus, and I've told this to everyone. It's like, one, we have to concentrate resources on the needle movers. You can't do the lot of littles thing. You stretch everything like a mile wide, we're getting nowhere on this. Like, we got to concentrate on a couple big things. And if you look at it, there's like 4 main sections. All right, we're going to return to the moon. We're going to build a moon base. We are going to launch a nuclear power and propulsion mission. We'll unlock an orbital economy, and we're always doing science, right? So we concentrate on a couple main things, and then the rest is empowering the workforce, right? Like, if I all I cared about was getting back to the moon, I wouldn't be spending the time or navigating the political waters to convert thousands of contractors back to civil servants, right? That's not for one mission. That's to be able to do lots of missions in the future. So all these policy burn downs that we're doing, it's painstaking, right? Like, a lot of people, like Carlos, can come up and they can talk about a moon base, super exciting, right? There's a lot of people that you'll never meet that are at headquarters right now. They're like working 24/7, just reviewing policies, process documents that are decades old that slow stuff down and figuring out how to amend them or delete them. But that all comes back to like empowering the best and brightest to do these kind of things again, right? So those are two things. If we can survive all the political wickets that come up and actually concentrate the resources on why the taxpayers wanted NASA to exist in the first place, and really empower the people that come and show up and work every single day, then we're going to be able to do incredible things.
Just from the bottom of our hearts here, both here with us and for many others, I just want to say thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And thank you for offering your time, because we know you're a very busy man. We know you have a lot of other things to do and more people to talk to, but it's been an absolute privilege and an honor to speak with you tonight.
No, I appreciate all the questions. It's great to interact with everybody. There is a lot to talk about, and I can't promise you that it's going to slow down anytime soon at all. So if people are still catching up from next week, hang on, because this is what the next couple of years is going to look like. And you're like 3.5 weeks away from rolling out the next core stage.
Yeah.
And people start telling people like it's time to start believing again. Like, hardware's going to start showing up at KSC again. We're going to start stacking again. We're going to make a point that this can be done a lot faster than people think possible. Well, thanks.
Thank you so much for your time. That was wonderful.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Good questions.
Absolutely. Thank you.